What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets Central podcast. This is episode 53 as the New York Mets drop their home series, their first home series of 2025 to the Arizona Diamondbacks. A lot of things to not like, a lot of things that are concerning, some continuing patterns, some poor management decisions, but we got a lot to get into as I will be doing this by myself here today. Unfortunately, Matt is not able to be a part of the show today. So I'm gonna be flying solo here today, trying to get through this as best as I could and talk about this series that happened, the series coming up, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. And then of course in the live chat, you guys could jump in, all that stuff. But I do want to ask everyone to leave a like on their way in, subscribe, or if you're watching on replay, subscribe if you guys are new to the channel, especially if you're Met fans. Turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live here on Met Central. And I want to remind everyone in the chat when you're typing, we're not ignoring your comments, questions, whatever it may be. We are just trying to get through, or I'm saying we, like that's here. But I will try to get to your comments as the conversation is going on. I'm just trying to stay relevant to, of course, the topic at hand, which is what it will be with the the Mets series and just what I talk about in that given moment. So again, all I ask is that you please be respectful if you comment and you feel like I'm not reading it. But yeah, there's a lot to unpack with the series that just occurred with the Diamondbacks, as it was really just an unfortunate series that the Mets had in their stranglehold. This Diamondback squad in all three games ended up winning one of them, losing the other two. And I wanted them to win two out of three. And to me, this is one of those series where it's a measuring stick type of series where you got to show me that you are better than that Diamondback squad that is going to be a playoff level team. I mean, that's just how they are. So I wanted to see them go in and take two out of three, and most importantly, win one of those last two games, considering the fact that they were going against some better pitchers there. Unfortunately, those are the two games they dropped. Now let's get to the breakdown though of each individual game in terms of the scoring, all that stuff. So in the first game, it was Eduardo Rodriguez versus David Peterson. And throughout that game, we would see a lot of chaos as you fast forward through a little bit, you see Pete Alonso making tons of diving stops over at first base. And in the bottom of the second, the Mets would get on the board as Luis Angel Acuna had a single with one out. And then Tyrone Taylor with two outs gets a RBI double to make it 1-0. And then Jose Azocar, who was only in the lineup due to the fact that you had a sick Brandon Nimmo that day, he ends up driving in a run to make it 2-0. And then Francisco Lindor would open the game further, making it 4-0 with a whole home run there. And then the bottom of the third inning, Pete Alonso would get on with a walk, and then that would allow Starling Marte to get a home run to make it 6-0. You fast forward a little bit further in that inning, and Tyrone Taylor would drive in Luis Angel Acuna with an RBI single, which made it 7-0. Then in the fourth inning, we might have seen the best display of defense we have ever seen in a single inning, as David Peterson, he is inevitable with the defense, and Randall Grichuk ends up hitting into that ground out there, which Mark Vientos flips it over to Lindor, who flips it over the first base, which was insane. And then Gurriel ends up flying out to center field. Tyrone Taylor making an unbelievable grab, which I thought had a double written all over it. And then Eugenio Suarez with a ground out to shortstop, but it was not an easy play for Lindor to make. Pete Alonso in the bottom of that inning would end up making it 8-0 with a home run. And as we fast forward through, unfortunately, in the fifth inning, David Peterson would face trouble, and it resulted in a run coming in as Barossa gets an RBI double to make it 8-1 there. And then as we fast forward later on in the game, Kevin Herget struggled to get through the final frame there as he ends up allowing a couple base runners, which resulted in a couple of them scoring, which made it 8-3 for the Diamondbacks. But overall, the Mets would hold up and prevail. Then in game two, you had Corbin Burnes versus Huascar Brazaban, as the Mets did a opener in this game, which was also very interesting. And that's the thing that's unfortunate with having to go to the sixth starter. You have to rely on these openers. But this game was really infuriating to watch. So it would be quick work for Brosban in the first two innings. The Mets had Corbin Burnes on the ropes in the bottom of the first as they had bases loaded with one out, but Starling Marte would fail to come through as he takes an uncompetitive at bat to strike out, and then Jeff McNeil would ground out on the first pitch that he would see in that at bat. Brandon Waddell would come in, and he was as good as he ever could have been, which we'll talk more about later. Mark Vientos, though, would get a home run to get the Mets on the score sheet to make it 1-0 early. And then you fast forward later on, and you had some questionable managerial decisions starting early on as Brandon Waddell was pulled in the seventh inning. And then Ryan Stanek comes in, would surrender some base runners, and Perdomo would end up getting two of those guys in, making it a 2-1 game. And then some more questionable manager decisions leads to the appearance here later on in the game of one Chris Davinsky, who ended up getting 2 innings of work. And in that ninth inning, he allowed a couple of runs. And of course, naturally, the Mets would respond in the bottom of the ninth to make it interesting, as Tyrone Taylor would knock a home run to make it 4-2. A solo shot there. Francisco Lindor would draw a walk. Juan Soto would draw a walk. Pete Alonso gets hit by a pitch. And then with no outs and the bases loaded, the Mets have to come through. But you have Mark Vientos, who just takes a really bad at bat and strikes out. Jesse Winker, unfortunately, with a ground out there, a controversial one, which might have went off of his foot. And then you had McNeil, who was intentionally walked, but Alvarez would ground out trying to play hero ball, and that ended up resulting in a 4-3 loss. In the third and final game, Zach Gallen would go against Kodai Senga, as this was another, again, win that was really in their grasp. They just could not get the job done. Senga faced a lot of trouble, though, throughout this outing, especially in that third inning would be the first one. And then the fourth inning would be even more trouble, as he allows a run from Alec Thomas, driving in a run with an RBI single. And then Corbin Carroll at the wall gets robbed by Brandon Nimmo, which would have been probably either a grand slam or at the very least extra base hits. Eugenio Suarez would get a sac fly off of Max Kranick in the fifth inning, as Genesis Cabrera end up being relieved for there. And then in the bottom of the sixth inning, Juan Soto would finally do it, getting his first home run at Citi Field as a New York Met. Unfortunately, though, Perdomo would respond with a home run to make it 3-1. Then Juan Soto would cut the lead down to 3-2, as again he hits another home run in that eighth inning, which was encouraging to see. But then Tim Tawa ends up responding in the ninth inning, which again, a couple more managerial decisions in question. And then in the bottom of the ninth, it really did not matter, as the Mets had a lot of uncompetitive at-bats, and it resulted in them losing. So overall, the thing that sucks the most is that all these games were winnable. The 2 losses were so winnable, but there are a lot of concerns after the series that I have, and it really stems with the offense, where you're not seeing a difference in the plate approach. You're not seeing a difference at all in terms of, again, situational hitting, which is really the biggest problem. This team is not good with runners in scoring position, and it's more than not good. Like, they are ranked really low amongst their peers in the National League in terms of how bad they are with runners in scoring position. And, I could tell you right now, you're not going to go far, even with the record you have. And again, it is great and all that they have the record they do, but you need to start taking advantage, especially when you have these pitchers on the ropes, like a Corbin Burns, who they had on the ropes, like a Zach Gallen, even at points where they had on the ropes, or more so in that game. It was really the eighth inning where the Mets had them on the ropes, because you had 2 on with 1 out and you fail to capitalize there. I'm more mad at the second game than the third game for losing that one, because the second game, I think, falls more on Mendoza. The third game, I didn't love what Mendoza did, but it falls more on the offense. But game 2, even also, I mean, you go over 10 with runners in scoring position. The offense deserves some blame. Let's start with Mendoza's poor decision making throughout the series. So it's really magnified in the losses, of course, more than anything, because losing, of course, really magnifies everything. The first game, I mean, there really wasn't anything I questioned managerial wise in that game, even though I'm not just saying it because they won. Like, I would point it out even if they won, but I didn't critique anything that happened in that game. I just kind of thought everything was fine that happened there. The second game, though, this is where I'm trying to understand what the idea is with the bullpen, which unfortunately the Mets are dealing with more injuries. Apparently, Danny Young might need Tommy John surgery now, and there's just been so much fluctuation with the guys that they're calling up, sending down, and just too many minor league pitchers here. But let's go to the second game where I think there's a lot of arguments from Met fans and myself about how this game was managed. So Huascar Brosman gets the opener. No issues there. I was happy that they got 2 innings. And then Brandon Waddell comes in. The debate that I'm seeing online, and it's fair because people are arguing they should not have pulled Waddell in that inning that they did, which I believe was the seventh inning, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it was the seventh inning because he strikes out Naylor and then gets pulled. In the moment, I was sitting there thinking, all right, this is the right decision. You let him face the lefty. Don't let him face the guy that already got a hit off of him and Moreno and go to the bullpen. I had no issue with that. In hindsight, maybe I do regret thinking that way, and I'm sure Mendoza does as well because Waddell was dealing outside of, you know, 3 hits that he allowed, and Moreno just so happened to be one of those guys. I didn't have as much of an issue there as I did with going to Ryan Stanek in that situation because Ryan Stanek in the past few games, the past week, he has blown, I would say, about 3 games now. And you go to him as the first guy out of the pen when Reed Garrett did not pitch to that point for since game 2 of the National Series, which was a 4-game set. Why not go to Reed Garrett there and let him be the guy to get you through that inning? And then you go to Davinsky in the 8th inning, which was really bizarre to me because it's like, all right, now you should go to Edwin Diaz or Reed Garrett. The only reason I say Diaz is because of the part of the order coming up there. But it ends up working out with Davinsky. I'm like, fine. But it's a 2-1 game with the top of the order due up the following inning. Why is Davinsky getting another inning there? To me, that made absolutely no sense at all. And Edwin Diaz already warmed up. He's a guy that did not pitch for 4 days, and he's a guy that works best in rhythm. Why not go to Diaz there? And instead, they waved the white flag, and it cost them because they would have ended up winning that game if they went to Edwin Diaz in the 9th inning there. And, or most likely, we don't know, obviously, because Diaz has been shaky. I don't want to sit here and say it's a lock they would have won. However, you like your odds better, obviously, with Edwin Diaz in that 9th inning. And then the offense does what they do. And you're probably talking about a win in that game. And we're talking about a walk-off, and no one's looking at the 0 for 10 with runners in scoring position. No one cares because they won. And then you win the series, and no one's even talking about game 3 either, the way that that unfolded. But that's where we have more issues. So Kodai saying it fails to give volume, which that's a problem in itself. The first guy out of the pen is Genesis Cabrera, who they called up that day. I don't know if Carlos Mendoza knows this, but you don't have to use the guys that you call up when they're fresh off the bus. But he decides to go to Cabrera, which I didn't hate either because you had the 2 lefties and Pavin Smith coming up, and you had, I believe it was it was Josh Naylor coming up. You have one ask, and there's one job for Cabrera to do: get those 2 guys out. He gets the first batter, fails to get them. And then all of a sudden you have to scramble and put Max Kranick in. Okay, that's fine. And Kranick ends up allowing a run. I'm not going to ridicule him again. When you're getting that much work, you are going to allow runs every now and then. Reed Garrett comes in. Now, this is where I don't understand what went down. Reed Garrett comes in, fine, no issue there. And it's like, okay, you're learning from what the mistake was last time. But Reed Garrett then goes out and gets a 2nd inning. So hold on a second here. If Reed Garrett now could go 2 innings in an outing, why couldn't he go 1 inning the day prior and then pitch in this game as well? Why'd you have to save Reed Garrett for the 3rd game of the series? And yet Edwin Diaz warm up for a 2nd straight day, who has not got work in 5 days now at this point. Now 6 if I'm not wrong. Why not put him in the game there in that 9th inning? And then Garrett gets 2 outs after allowing the home run. And for whatever reason, Mendoza elects to go to Ty Adcock there for absolutely no reason. And then he made that an adventure. So I didn't love the way Mendoza managed throughout this series. And again, there's more to it because the offense did not produce the way that they needed to. Just no situational hitting with this team. And you have a lot of question marks right now, I would say. Brandon Nimmo, and Mark Vientos are two huge question marks because Vientos, he got a home run. He had a hit in the second game, or sorry, he had a hit in the no, yeah, that home run was his actually his only hit of the series. Sorry, I got that mistaken there. But you need the timely hits from him. You need Brandon Nimmo to step through and get the timely hits. And I know he had the RBIs he did against Washington, but you can't sit here and say it's one game when they lose and then when they win the way they do, and you can't just be like, "Oh yeah, this is who they are." Both things are true. It's one game for both those respective aspects there. But you need more consistency there. And you just aren't getting it at all from Mark Vientos, from Brandon Nimmo, and the rest of this offense with the situational hitting. Because even Juan Soto, I mean, outside of the third and final game where it was all him doing it, there were times he was up with guys on base, didn't come through. Francisco Lindor, who's been red hot, did not come through in the final game of the series. But I'm looking mostly at Vientos, Nimmo, and then you didn't get anything from the catcher position in this series at all. Alvarez went 0-4 in both games. Torrens went 0-4 in the final game. You got nothing from the catcher position. Jeff McNeil had 2 hits in the series, but none of them in the timely spots. And the thing that drives me insane is that Acuna went 2 for 4 in that first game, and then we don't see him the rest of the series. Or no, we did actually see him in game 2. I forgot because Nimmo was still sick in that second game. But either way, I mean, I would have liked to have seen more Acuna at points, even too, just a pinch hit for Jeff McNeil, who was not getting it done. So I don't know. There were a couple things that were weird, but the offense at the end of the day just needs to come through. And then Tyrone Taylor, even, I mean, he has a good first game of the series. You don't see him the rest of the series, pretty much. Or a good second game, rather. The first 2 games, actually. I forgot he went 3 for 4 in that second game. Damn. Matt's not here, Jonathan. That's why. You didn't get anything from Taylor in the final game, is what I mean. But overall, to be said, you just need more timely hits from this offense. And it's something that worries me. And then there was just fundamental issues in the diamond, too. Like Jeff McNeil hitting the base runner going to third base. That can't happen. Tyrone Taylor shouldn't have been throwing that ball to second base to begin with. So there's so many little details even with this team where it's like they're not focused on certain aspects that they need to be. So there are a lot of things, little things that you can look at and say they got to improve in these departments, or this record, it's great while they have it now. It's not going to last. Now let's get to guys like David Peterson's outing, though. David Peterson went 5 innings, 5 hits, 1 earned run, no walks, and 2 strikeouts. Typical David Peterson outing. And it sucks too, because in my head, I was like, maybe you're finally going to get volume from David Peterson. They just did not end up getting that volume at all because his pitch count got driven up with some of the later innings that he faced. You didn't get swing and miss stuff from him at all in this outing, really. I mean, you had 9 whiffs on 42 swings, which is just not ideal, but this is what David Peterson does. And then Jose Budo, credit to him, though. He had a nice bounce back outing, which he desperately needed, and he needs to find his rhythm. So I was very happy to see that. Herget made it in an adventure, but it all worked out. But with David Peterson, I was very upset to see that he couldn't give the length. And then in the second game, I mean, maybe you should have pushed Waddell a little more. But this is the thing too, right? Where I was okay with the Waddell decision in the moment, but the thought kind of just came to my head now, actually. Why is it that if you were so conservative with the way you were going to use your bullpen in that second game, why not push Waddell to go further? Why are you not pushing him to give you 5 to 6 innings when he was cruising the way he was? Why not push him more if you were going to be that conservative with your bullpen either way? That's not making sense to me at all. And it's a shame because Waddell, he's gonna have to be back at some point. I actually liked what I saw from him in that outing. I thought his breaking stuff was really solid. Actually, I really liked the changeup that he was throwing. I liked the slider. I wish he utilized the changeup more, but I actually kind of liked what I saw from Waddell. It is one outing, so the jury's out. But I liked what I saw from him. But if you were going to be so conservative with the bullpen, why not push him to go further? And then the third game, I mean, Senga gave you nothing, and apparently he was pitching sick. So something's going around the clubhouse now that Nimmo got sick, and then Senga got sick. But again, Reed Garrett, he can't go in the second game, but he could go in that third game. Very bizarre. The thing that was weird to me at Senga's outing, I feel like he didn't use the ghost fork as much as he usually does, which, I mean, he threw it the second most out of any pitch, but there were times where it was like, all right, use the ghost fork as the put away here. And he didn't go to it at certain points. And I don't know if he's trying to throw the hitters off with that. I mean, I assume, but it was very interesting to see that just watching from the stands. I can tell you right now, though, this team is going to need to get external help with pitching because right now, you're not getting by with the circle of trust being Edwin Diaz and Reed Garrett. I mean, that's literally the circle of trust right now at this point. Because outside of that, you have and Ryan Stanek, Jose Budo, and then you have Kranick and Brazaban, who are your long relief men, and then you have some minor league guys back there. I want David Robertson back. I don't know how fresh and ready he would be if they were to make the call and bring him in. But that's who I would want because he has good reverse splits, especially with Minter and now Danny Young going down. That would be my preference, but I just don't know if they're going to go that route because of, like I said, I don't know how ready D-Rob would be if you were to make the phone call and have him come here to pitch. So it's just very messy with the injuries. It's very messy with the offense, and it's just again, like you're gonna lose series throughout the season, but it's just annoying how this series was so winnable, but just bad fundamentals again, bad managerial decisions at points, not getting the timely hits from an offense that you expect to get more timely hits. It is just that simple. So yeah, I mean, I'm not quite sure where you go from here with the pitching side of things, though. I'm curious if the Mets made any roster move today, though, with sending anyone down, calling anyone up on the pitching front. Does not look like it, which is very interesting. At least for now. I mean, the game's not till 8, so we'll see if there ends up being any roster moves with like Adcock or Cabrera. But I just don't understand why Mendoza was so reliant on these minor league guys throughout the series. That's the thing that's odd to me. And then that game too, I mean, Ryan Stanek in that Perdomo at bat. Ryan Stanek is out of the circle of trust right now until further notice. Why is Ryan Stanek in that inning to Perdomo going 5 straight fastballs when you're up in the count 1-2? Why are you not giving him a splitter? Why are you not making him chase out of the zone on a breaking pitch? Why are you going to a fastball down the middle there? I don't understand that either. I mean, it's just like there were so many little weird things throughout this series where it was just I just have so many questions with certain things that happen. But yeah, I'm going to keep this podcast on the shorter end, just because it's a little hard to do this myself, and honestly, I want to leave this up with enough time for people to listen to it before the game starts and not keep it too long here. But the Mets head to St. Louis, or they're in St. Louis and start tonight their series. Clay Holmes versus Sonny Gray in game one. Tyler McGill versus Eric Fetty in game number two. And then Palante versus Blade Tidwell potentially, because Blade Tidwell was actually getting called up. That was the move I remember. Maybe they're going to wait until the day of Sunday, the day of the game, rather, on that Sunday to make it official that they're calling him up. That would be my assumption. But yeah, Blade Tidwell is going to be called up, and congrats to him. And I'm excited to see what he could bring to the table. People are pointing to, of course, his AAA ERA. To me, that doesn't mean anything. There were numbers to back up that his strikeout rate's good. Just go out there, perform, and let's see what you do. I'm willing to give a chance. Let's just see what happens there. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. I expect them to take 2 out of 3 in the series. Think you have to, especially after the way you beat this Cardinals team in your own ballpark, and considering the fact that you need to clean up what you just did at home and get those timely hits. So we'll see. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you everyone for tuning in and watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Turn on your notifications so you know when I upload or go live. And I'll see you guys in the next one.